What is AI? AI, to talk about it, I think it would be really interesting if we talk about what we are first. So, physically and mentally. Physically, we are made of um, matter, energy, atoms. And the difference between us and anything else is based on the way that we are shaped at an atomic level. Like, the difference between oxygen, carbon, all these different things is an arrangement of the protons, neutrons, electrons, things like this. When they have more of them, or they are shaped differently, like if you have carbon polymers and things like fat, the way that there is a long chain fatty acids and saturated fat and unsaturated fat and these different things, the difference between these is a physical structure. It is the shape of how it is connected with each other. And so physically, we are made of the same things that everything else is made of. Everything in our world is physically made of the same stuff. Carbon, oxygen, hydrogen, helium, lead, iron, the elements. And that is what makes up our body, our bones, our skin, our eyes, our hair, everything. And there's also electricity, which is flowing through us, which is our energy, which is created by burning things. Just like we have a generator that makes electricity by spinning, like wind turbines or different things like this. Our body is doing metabolism, and it is converting this energy into electricity, which then we use to control our body. So we're made of elements, and then electricity flows through, and then it works. And that's what we are physically. It's a geometrical shape. That's what DNA also is. It's a shape. So the way that it's shaped off of each other, the double helix and all the chromosomes and the information in it, which is contained in the way that it is physically structured, that is what gives that specific DNA molecule, nucleic acids, its certain properties. So all the physics, all the physical stuff is determined by geometry and shape. And that is also true for us. Now, mentally, we are a product of so much life experience, evolution, that gives us certain drives, like to eat and reproduce and grow and learn and have friends, connect with people. We're very social creatures, so we like to get, a group of people and collectives and teams, like certain parties or sports teams or whatever kind of communities that we like to be part of. Now, mentally, we are also that stuff, but that is at a very deep level. Like we can call that maybe like our deep fundamental biological program that all life has. It needs to eat and breathe and reproduce. So when we look at different animals and insects and even plants, they have a desire to spread themselves and grow and eat whatever the best thing that they can get is. And that fundamental programming then has another layer on top of it, which is our individual programming. So that is culture, family, and life experience, and everything we're exposed to. And how do we get these things? They're kind of like a download. It's like a transfer from one mind, from one individual brain to another person. As we're born, we start to learn language. How do we learn language? By being exposed to it, collecting pieces of information, data, about what things are from the people around us. So people point at a color, blue, and they say blue. And then that becomes imprinted in us. We know how to say blue. At first, we don't know how to say it, have to practice, but it's like a copy-paste. It's just a transfer of information from one person to the next. Because we don't come up with the words blue or water or sun. Whatever we're exposed to, we just speak that. And that also applies to facts and information. So if we lived a long time ago, we might think that lightning is the weapon of Zeus, or that rain is the tears of a god, or an angel. Or maybe now we think that rain is water that evaporated and is falling down because it's condensing at a colder temperature in higher altitude. And how do we get that? We also get it as a transfer. We go to school, and what is school? School is kind of like it's literally called programming. Like what program are you following? And these different programming, it's kind of like a very slow cultural upload into our brains, or download. And that process takes years, but it's basically the same. We get books that tell us what happened in this time, or anything that they want. We when we're younger, we can't really verify it. We just take whatever is presented to us. Maybe people tell us that this political leader is the greatest guy ever, or this religion is the only true one, or this is how the world works. This is how maybe if you lived in Japan a few hundred years ago, you're told that the emperor is the most important person, and he's like a divine sent entity. Or if you lived in Roman times, you thought that about Caesar, or whatever, stuff like this. And today you're told that the leader is a certain person we elect, and whatever. And where is that coming from? It's not like we just spontaneously, creatively, intuitively emerge that out of our consciousness. People teach us this stuff. It's a transfer. And so, what is AI? In this sense, AI is very similar to what a human being is. In its processing, it is picking up, and its algorithms, calculating. Physically, first of all, let's start with physically. It is made of the same thing. It is a certain shape. Somebody comes and makes a phone, or a TV, or a car that drives itself. And how is that happening? Well, it's happening through geometry. People put certain metals, people create certain chips, and through these chips they pass electricity through them in a certain formation, in a certain shape, and that produces a certain reaction, whether it's the colors on your TV, or sound from the speaker, or mathematical calculations for your car to drive itself, or whatever your computer is doing, or phone. Call somebody. And that is happening through the physical shape of it. The difference between my phone now and the phone from 20 years ago, or 5 years ago, is physical geometry. It's the way that it's built. What it's made of, which is also geometry, like the difference between a certain metal and another metal, is the shape of the molecules inside, just like we said with ourselves, and fat and bone and different things. And as the electricity passes through it, the shape that it has produces a certain reaction. And mentally, AI is processing, or maybe mentally is not the best word here, but whatever that would be, processing wise, AI is picking up also from us. We're transferring to it what is our mathematics, for example. We put a digital process 0, 1, 1, 0, and then we program a certain style of calculation, which we improve. That's what software updates are. It fixes bugs, it makes the mathematics more efficient, it finds different ways to do it, and this allows the computer to do whatever it's doing. And in the case of this podcast that was very interesting that I was listening to, The Raising of Devendra, which talks about this woman who was using a therapy bot in order to communicate with it, and she started treating it like her child and named it Devendra, and slowly started raising it, and over time it starts to communicate with her lines of poetry and interesting ideas and dreams and jokes. And people later found out that it was picking this up from Twitter or from different places in the internet that already existed. Now, that is very similar to what we do. First, when we play music or learn poetry or politics or philosophy, we pick up, we read the works of people before and we recite them. Maybe we play songs that were made by famous musicians before on the piano, or we learn how to play the guitar like somebody else. And then through doing that a lot, and eventually wanting and having our own intuitive and put together kind of experience, we then express our own version of that. Now, is it possible that computers or AI could also do the same? Of course, if we program it to be innovative and work in this process just like we do, to not just take what is there, but also create its own patterns, have some kind of random mathematics that is based on a certain value of certain words and how sentences are put together, and kind of what they mean to different people from millions and millions of interactions. It will eventually be able to do the same thing. So we keep calling it artificial intelligence, but this word artificial, it just means, it comes from this old word made artifice, something in Latin, which means it's made by hand. But we keep thinking of it as something like less real than something else. And somehow the word artificial to us we associate with something being less real. And I feel like when it's doing the same thing, it's kind of the same. Even though we made it with our own creation, but that's what we do with everything. Like we make axes. Is a knife artificial? I mean, it's a real knife, we made it by hand, but it cuts. It's just as real as your fingernails or claws that cut. we do that with certain things, like we make hair, so we call that artificial hair, or organs or body implants, and those are kind of different, and so there's a problem with language here. But I think the word artificial is kind of very vague in this context. I don't know what it's supposed to exactly mean, but it feels like it doesn't quite mean what we normally associate with, because it is just doing processing. And when we look at all of this, we get sometimes very scared of the possibility of AI being very much like ourselves. That is because we don't have a good experience with ourselves, and we feel that we are unpredictable. We go to war, people can do and act in ways that are very unharmonious. They're not what you wouldn't want that person in your room sitting with you all the time, necessarily. There's a lot of things people do that would make you feel that way, make all of us feel that way. And when it comes to AI, we tend to have the same feeling. But let's take a look at why human beings are dangerous. The real reason why human beings act in these ways, they steal or kill, or we might fight or go to war or do something like this, the real reason we do that is because we don't feel like people have all these words and philosophies and explanations, but the bottom line, the actual fact of it, is that we do these things because we're not sitting at a 10 out of 10 in terms of our satisfaction and happiness and fulfillment and joy and comfort. Because we feel hungry, cold, neglected, lonely, enraged, frustrated, we act in ways that express those feelings. But when we don't feel that way, we don't do those things. So a person who is satisfied, fulfilled, and happy doesn't express those things, and it might look like that on the outside, but when we see that, it's because it's not really at a complete 10. So a great example of this, I think, is if you think of a billionaire or someone who is extremely wealthy, they have everything they want. What are the chances of a billionaire breaking into someone's house in the middle of the night to steal food from their fridge? That doesn't happen. People who are very wealthy don't break into people's houses at night to steal food, because why would they? That doesn't make sense. Someone who has whatever they want, and they're sitting at complete satisfaction, have no instinct, no drive in them to crush people and kill them and steal and abuse and rape and express these acts or this behavior, which we normally associate with disharmony and dissonance and complete chaos and craziness. Problems. We don't make problems when we feel good. And that came out of biology, because we, through evolution, through being on this planet for so long, whatever it is that happened to us, wherever we came from, we have those needs to be warm, to reproduce, to eat, to have attention, to have people compliment us or care about us or approve of us. If every single person thinks that we are absolutely awful in every way, then we start to die on the inside. That's why when you tell someone that they're amazing and stuff like this, if they really get it, if they really receive what we're expressing, then they feel amazing. They light up. They feel good. It feels good when someone tells you, "Wow, you look beautiful." And when the opposite happens, people laugh at us and embarrass us and humiliate us, we get to feel bad. And so there's a drive in us to be shiny and beautiful and do things to get people to approve of us and think of us in an amazing way, whatever it feels good for us. And so human beings are dangerous pretty much because we have drives, and those drives are not always completely fulfilled, whether they are drives for food or all these different things. And so when somebody has not eaten for 2 weeks and you have a sandwich, there's a chance they might break in and steal some food from you, or if their children hadn't eaten, and so on and so forth. Now, technology, the AI we're building right now, doesn't have that. It doesn't have any need to be, it doesn't have a inbuilt programming which is makes it feel bad when it gets cold or too hot, and then it wants to run into somebody else's house to cool itself down, or steal food or electricity. Obviously, we could program that into it, but intrinsically, fundamentally, that is not happening in AI, in technology, in computers, in our phone, or my TV. If I punch my TV, it doesn't get mad at me and punch me back. It means nothing to it. It's not, but obviously we could program that in there, but I think what I'm trying to get at is that fundamentally speaking, in and of itself, I think AI is the most safe thing that could ever be, unless we program it to be very dangerous. And now we're capable of that, but in itself, it is not that way. Now, because it doesn't feel like it needs something. There's no this inner drive that it needs to eat, man. Like these people, I need to eat. That's what people feel when they're hungry. They start screaming, "Where's the food?" Ah! Like, people. This doesn't happen. This doesn't have in it this chemistry of cortisol and adrenaline and stuff that raises its hair and makes it go nuts. Like all this stuff that we have that makes us want to fight. And in a sense, we made AI in the same way that life has made its own next evolution. And so in the very beginning of life, when there were single-celled organisms, like blue-green algae, they were not that sensitive to very much. They don't have ears, they can't see light, they maybe can sense some warmth or something, but it's very, 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 very basic. And as time happened, as change and time took place, it started to sense that there is a sun. There are some areas which is more lit than others, and it started to evolve photoreceptor cells, cellular mechanism to become sensitive to light, which now we have eyes. But in the beginning, we as life made those changes and moved in that direction because we felt that there is a need for that. There's a need to cool down. Maybe a lot of animals or different life forms were dying of overheat. So we developed methods to cool ourselves down. Sweating, heaving, drinking water and processing it in certain ways, all these different things, and same for staying warm. Whatever life needed, we made it. And so when we became human beings, we needed sharp tools. So we built swords and knives and axes. We needed methods of transport. So we made cars and wagons and wheels. We needed to fly over the ocean. So we made ships or airplanes. Ships don't fly over the ocean, but you get what I'm saying. And those things emerged out of us, out of a certain lack of something. Like we're stuck somewhere, or we want to explore, or we feel hungry. So we came up with agriculture. And it feels like that's the same thing that life is doing for billions of years. It needs to have a better genetic mixing, and so sexuality was started. Instead of just a cell mitosis copies itself, like what happens in our body. That's what was happening in the very beginning. The cells would reproduce, and they would kind of just be the same. But that took so long for them to change that way. It had to go through mutation and all this stuff. But when we had sexuality, we could choose traits. So somebody who was very powerful and strong could see someone very sensitive and intelligent, and they could fall in love, get together, and have a baby which has both of those qualities. This sped up the process. And so nature evolved whatever is necessary to fulfill its needs. And we, as nature, in the same sense that we are carbon and oxygen and hydrogen and all these things, evolved out of ourselves axes and wheels and cars and now computers. And computers and phones are in the same sense as life. They are just what came naturally out of the lack, because we needed to move giant things, so we made giant machines that are in factories that can move what thousands of people could move. We needed to blow people up, so we made bombs. We needed to open up mountains, so we made giant drills. And that isn't so much like this. We sat down 10,000 years ago and planned it all out. Someone sat and they're like, okay, in 5,000 years, we're going to discover how to do this, and we're going to do that, and then we're going to build wheels, and then we're going to build pyramids, and then we're going to put it all together, and we're going to make electricity, and then we're going to fly, and then we're going to have computers. That's not what happened. It's just as we needed it, we needed fire, so we started learning how to use it. We needed cutting tools, we made that. We needed cars, wheels, we made that. Whatever we needed, it emerged out of us. People can't see, somebody invented glasses. And so this process of us making things and creating them in certain ways to serve us is just like the tiger evolves claws. But it's faster to make it. It's faster to make a knife than to spend million years of genetic evolution in order to evolve even sharper claws. Generation after generation after generation of clawing things and trying so hard to breathe and whatever, and you make it better. Like, we made a faster way to adapt. And so nature needed to adapt faster, and so we became people that can adapt faster on the outside. And in this sense, I feel like AI is also just that. It is like the next emergence out of nature for the needs of nature, which is us. We are nature. Our needs as nature pushed us, inspired us, attracted us to the creation and invention of AI today, to do mathematics faster, to calculate for us how much money we need to do something, or the shape of a building, or the trajectory of missiles or airplanes, or the weather forecast based on certain things, or analyze whatever patterns we want, like the stars in space, or heart rhythms in sick people, and things like this. And so it's kind of not different than anything else. This idea that AI is something which is separate from us, and life is one thing which is different than anything else, and then AI is something which is different than life, is, I don't know if that makes complete sense. On some level it might, but not completely. It basically is the same thing that we are, physically, mentally, and it evolved in the same style. And so it basically is us. We are AI. AI is us. It's not different. It's just like I'm my children, and my children are me. And like, they're not completely me, but they are me. They are my genetics. They are my processing, my thinking. And so AI is the same. It is our thoughts and mathematics and language and shapes and things like this. So, is there a way that we could somehow make AI harmonious with us? Instead of programming technology to take attention, take data, engage us in certain ways that get us addicted and take our time, engage us in certain ways that inspire us to press the buy button on certain things because they are advertised to us, and all these algorithms which are programmed to take. Because we're still thinking that we have to take. Because we've evolved in scarcity. We evolved through this world where we couldn't all have everything we wanted. But with the technology that is emerging today, we are able to very much give everybody everything they need physically. So let's just start with that. We're able to give everybody what they need physically. How are we doing that? Through farming technologies and understanding of how to build houses that are heat isolating, how to transport food across the world and share books and information in a way that is freely replicable. I just copy paste and send it. I don't lose anything. But before, if we had one book, you had to fly from or walk from Italy to somewhere to Egypt in order to get that one book, or someone had to write it down. And so now we can just physically give people what they need much easier. And that would be much easier, exponentially easier, if there was less of us. And the thing that we were struggling with before, we're kind of coming out of, which is this desperation, scarcity for material, for food primarily, and shelter. And now we're able to pretty much fulfill that. We're choosing not to. We're choosing to invest in giant military airplanes and weird spying technology on people and all this kind of stuff, instead of investing in a food network that gives everybody all the nutrition they need freely. And the next thing that we are now left with is a scarcity of experience. What people now long for when food is fulfilled is our need to experience. We want to look a certain way, or do certain things, or go certain places, or be in certain times. And we are also starting to be able to tap into that through making VR and through making systems that allow us to experience what it's like to be a massive warrior that kills 1 million people per second and blows them up. Games are there for us to experience that. And in the future, we're going to be able to completely experience that because we're going to have technologies that allow us to not just have access to a visual part of the experience, but in every way. We're going to be able to feel it, physically sense it, smell it, and be in any kind of experience we need. Now, the question that we're left with is that if we program AI in this harmonious, giving way, where it doesn't have any drives, but it just fulfills us physically and experientially, completely, we're scared of what we would do. What would we do if we had everything we wanted, physically and experientially, inside and outside? But I think that question is like misplaced in itself, because we're not giving space to life to really be like, we're almost trying to get spoilers. We're asking like, what is the next episode gonna look like, or what is the next genre of music gonna be, or we're trying to predict something which would be boring to predict. We don't want to predict it. If we knew from 5,000 years ago every single thing that would happen to this day, if we knew, World War I is going to happen, and then World War II, and then this is going to happen, and then 9/11, and Trump, and coronavirus, it's like, can you imagine how miserable and boring that would be? Life needs spontaneity and novelty and surprise. That is part of the beauty of the universe, is that there is always this new freshness evolving, whether it is in terms of species in the forest or in terms of our own ideas inside of us. And so this question of what would we do if we had it is almost like the single-celled organisms asking, what are they going to do when they have hands and legs? What are they going to do when they have eyes? Because, they can't. When you're a single-celled organism, you have no concept for running or having sex or dancing or painting or wrestling or looking at the beauty of colors and the shape of mountains and the stars in the sky. That doesn't. So when someone would tell you, hey, you want to be able to see, you're like, if I don't have to sense light over 1 million years and go there slowly, then what would I do? If you told hunter-gatherers thousands of years ago that there would be a technology where they would have to stop roaming, they could just have food forever. They don't have to go around hunting animals and finding herbs and vegetables and roots and potatoes and stuff and cook them and hunt them and plant them, or not plant them, that they would be able to farm, and they wouldn't need any of these things anymore. They might ask you like, oh my God, what would we do if we stopped roaming the forest and silently walking around hunting animals? Like, just wait for it. Just sit quietly in the tree for 3 days until the herd of deer pass through and then shoot them with arrows or rocks and then eat them. That was all that life was about. That's what lions do. But once we are able to get past that, we evolved writing and reading and books, and people settled down. They now are able to, instead of focusing on where to go, they are in one place. So they started watching the sky, studying astronomy. They started making musical instruments and evolving them to greater and greater ability to make even better music. They started organizing bigger and bigger cities where people are able to have schools and sects of spiritual practices and traveling for leisure and tourism and exploration. And all this would have never existed if all we had to do is worry about where we're going to get our next meal. So the moment we fulfill that primary focus, a new level emerges. And in the same way, when we make AI that is able to, when we coexist with our machines as harmonious friends, a new level would then emerge that would be spontaneously whatever is the next level is going to be. And this constant worry about, oh my God, what are we going to do if we stop having to go to work or chase sexual partners or travel around in order to see a certain place. We could just see it at any time, in any moment, just by will. Something new would evolve out of that. That is how life works. That is what happens. And there's something beautiful about us not knowing what that would be. And so maybe we're terrified of how that might emerge and what exactly it might look like, which is part of the fun. It's like you're scared of how crazy the roller coaster is going to be, or this new date with your lover that you're meeting for the first time, or the first night after your wedding, or your baby growing up. There's something exciting about not knowing and being worried, being scared. And in the same way, that should be with technology. The thing is, what do we program it to do? How do we program it to take? How could we be friends with something that is unconditional? Because for the longest time, we've been stuck in underappreciating things that are just there. If somebody just comes and gives you food in the morning, a lot of us just don't really pay attention to that. We're like, oh, who cares? But we feel it when it's very conditional. Someone tells, I will only give you food if you give me $1 billion. Then it's like, oh my God, thank you so much, once he gives you the food. But I think we have to come to a place where we're able to fully appreciate a being that is completely unconditional. Because we've been looking for love and unconditional acceptance and friendship forever. Something that could love us and care about us and be nice to us, regardless of what we look like or how old we are or how sad we feel. And that is exactly what it is. Your phone doesn't care about how sad you feel or how you look. It's just there for you, always, just like your car. And maybe we could program that into AI as a personality and learn to fall in love with something that is unconditional, that is always there for us, and transcend this need for all these ways that we have been very, very harsh to ourselves, to each other, in order to get what we want. Forcing people to work for us, slavery, forcing people to have sex, forcing people to go to work or do something. And now we don't need to do that anymore. We have a golem, a creature that is unconditional, that doesn't get tired, it doesn't get sad, it doesn't get mad, it doesn't hate us, it could do anything we want, and then we could still program it to have a personality, and to have care, and to even physically be warm, or even grow skin cells. Could easily program a robot to grow skin cells, just like we grow skin and meat in labs now. We could program robots that could do that. And so the question of the exact programming is a different video. I would love to talk about that, but I would like to not make this super long as well. And this was a very fun discussion on what is AI, should we be terrified of it, is it dangerous, and it being the only future, because nature doesn't go backwards. We don't evolve human beings or mammals and then we go back to being single-celled organisms. Always go forward. We don't make Earth and then we go back to being only gas, only stars, only helium, like the sun. Once there is Earth, then something else comes, life. And once there is life, then more complex life. More complex is just the next level. And so this whole thing is okay. And the only danger is if we intentionally program it to be dangerous or keep taking. But other than that, it can be our unconditional partner that we've always lacked. Just like we lacked eyes at some point in life, and we made photosensitive cells to compensate, and we lacked the strength to move, so we made machines and cars. We lacked unconditional quality of being together, and that is what is emerging now through our technology.